Many people often forget the dark side of Japanese history and their involvement in World War II and think that like the Nazis were the only bad guys in town. Nope. The Japanese did Nazi style experimentation in China and Korea as well. What is this? Japan in the 1960s was insane.
I received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government. I deem this reply the unconditional surrender of Japan.
There's this moment after World War II where the world is suddenly changing really quickly and Japan is being completely remade. Because armed with an unconditional surrender and the atomic bomb, America could do anything to Japan. But when soldiers under General Douglas MacArthur entered Tokyo, their assignment wasn't to punish the country that had just started a war that killed 30 million people.
The fudging of the numbers reminds me of why Japan has such a high conviction rate. Prosecutors only take cases they know they can win. No, they also can legally torture you for 38 days. That's why everyone always says if you ever get if you're ever arrested for a crime that you didn't even commit, it is literally easier for you to say that you did commit the crime. It's better for you to just admit guilt. Yeah. You have involuntary hold for 38 days, immediately. They can use that. Even if you're a tourist or an American, yes. The other side of it, though, is that if you're an American military member in Okinawa, for example, and you murk an entire Japanese family because you fell asleep on the wheel when you were driving around, and you do go to Japanese prison, America will extract you. America will literally go, hey, by the way, you have to give him back to us. He's a family guy. What I'm describing to you literally happened not that long, a couple months ago.
Instead, their task was to rebuild Japan, and more importantly, to transform it into a peaceful democratic nation. And today, that's what Japan has become, a democratic country famous for its technology and innovation, and for its peacefulness. But this American transformation didn't happen overnight, and its success was far from guaranteed. There was a time when anything was possible.
Democracies, when you have the same party run by the same familial lineage, dominate politics as a uniparty process in perpetuity. Have to rewrite your constitution. Notice how everybody chirps about China being a one-party state, but no smoke exists for any country that is within the sphere of influence. People will be like, oh, well, there's a democracy, there's other parties out there, there's a communist party out there. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
A time when leading politicians declared friendship with communists and swore opposition to America, when massive crowds dominated the streets of Tokyo, storming parliament, attacking American officials, and chanting, "Yankee, go home," when many believed Japan was on the verge of a socialist revolution. That is until this wave of resistance hit its final crescendo, when in 1 year, 3 enormous events combined to set Japan on the path to becoming the country we know today. First, a new treaty with America. Then, the largest protest in the country's modern history. And finally, a brutal samurai sword assassination televised for the entire country to witness. But these 3 events don't just explain why Japan is the way it is today, because this story actually helps explain a fundamental truth about why every society is the way it is. This is Japan 1960. The year that made a nation.
Typical gay incel fascist, dude. Like the OG in many respects.
This is the year of blood. The American occupation of Japan began with nearly boundless idealism. Immediately, the political and military leaders responsible for the conflict were arrested, many charged with war crimes, while the emperor was forced to renounce his divinity and endorse a shockingly progressive constitution. This new founding document established Japan as a
cap on caps. The Japanese war criminals that are targeted and identified as war criminals were literally given amnesty as a direct consequence of the war crimes that they engaged in. American military thought it would be infinitely more useful not to waste all of their torture camp experimentation Unit 731, specifically operating in Manchuria, that did a litany of war crimes, including testing what happens when you freeze someone to death, you know, things like that. What we ended up doing basically was saying, yeah, you guys are war criminals, but if you give us this information, if you give us all the secret torture stuff and all the documents, if you show us like what you did as far as like biological warfare, biological weapons, which we will inevitably use against our, you know, greatest enemy, which is communism, we won't arrest you and we won't prosecute you. That is a real thing. Many people often forget the dark side of Japanese history and their involvement in World War II and think that like the Nazis were the only bad guys in town. Nope. The Japanese did Nazi style experimentation in China and Korea as well. So like the idea that like it was, there's been no better rebranding than like, you know, post-imperial Japan, post-World War II Japan, a country that was never, a country that basically never had to reckon with its violence and its crimes, its war crimes, specifically because, you know, they were also victim to like a genuine crime, I would say, you know, 2 atom bombs kind of does that for you. It's pretty crazy. Plus, you know, the subsequent American allegiance that came afterwards, those 2 things played a major role. And I'm not even joking when I say this, anime, like literally. The fire bombings of Tokyo, the fire bombings of like densely populated civilian areas, and the 2 atom bombs being deployed on top of, again, densely populated civilian areas made people really go, you know what? I guess they did all the war crimes, but, you know, they did get war crime themselves, so it's fine, I guess.
Liberal democracy, of course, but it went further, guaranteeing equality between men and women and enshrining the rights of workers to unionize and self-advocate, measures absent even from America's own constitution. At the same time, large farms were divided.
I just learned about what Japan did in World War II in class. I've been shaking and crying ever since. This isn't the Sugoi Japan I know. This can't be real. Japan would never do that. I know from anime that Japan would never do this. Nandemo. I pride myself on being an anime expert, an otaku if you will, which means I know basically everything about Japan. So the more I think about it, the more I think this has to be fake. This is not Sugoi. This is not kawaii. There's a little bit unless there's like, I don't know, much larger developing hegemonic power in the region that we are trying to compete against and we're very afraid of, in which case we will allow Japan to redevelop its military capabilities, even personally, beyond the fact that we treat the island nation as a goddamn unsinkable aircraft carrier. Interesting. There was another group of Axis nations out there that we also demilitarized by force and then turned around and are now allowing to basically remilitarize. Surely nothing crazy will happen.
It stipulated the American military could freely station and move troops throughout.
I was going to say, it's a good thing that the occupation in Japan ended, which is why we don't have military bases all around the island nation. Or, you know, our wonderful crayon enjoyers can go and get drunk and drunk drive and kill Japanese families, or get drunk and drunk drive and then go rape, you know, Japanese women, only to face very little repercussion, if at all. Good thing we ended that occupation, and we certainly would never do that.
Japan, without being under any obligation to defend the country in the event of an attack. And the treaty had no.
Okinawa is so cooked, they drive on the right side there, bro. Think about that. The rest of Japan drives on the left side of the road. Okinawa, they drive on the right side, motherfucker. Think about that shit. No, they don't. Yes, they do, don't they? I thought they do on the on Okinawa. Look, unlike the United States, people drive on the left side of the road, the slow lane, driving in Okinawa on the fast lane on the right, although the slow lane is on the left and the fast lane is on the right, although there isn't usually a significant difference between either. Okinawa offers a distinct driving experience. Unlike the United States, people drive on the left side of the road. Wait, this is saying driving in Okinawa, people drive on the left side of the road. Like the rest of Japan, Okinawas drive on the left side of the road and international driver's license. Okay, maybe I was baited. When traffic patterns switched overnight, this prefecture was ready Wait, what? Yeah, no, they did. They did drive on the right side of the road. Okinawa had originally required driving on the left side, just like the rest of Japan. However, when the prefecture was under the control of American occupational force towards the end of World War II, everyone was made to drive on the right-hand side instead. No. I'm not talking about the Osaka, they stand on the opposite side of the escalator thing. No, this is legit. In Japan, everywhere else, they drive on the left side of the road. In Okinawa, however, there was a time when they drove on the right side of the road. I think maybe they changed it though. They changed it back. This region of Japan was one of the few places within the past half century to undergo a right to left traffic switch. The switch in Okinawa was also the first large scale conversion of its kind since Sweden switched from driving on the left hand side of the road to the right hand. About 2 months after the day on which Okinawa's motorists began to switch their driving again on the left side of the road, a stone memorial was set up. Wait, so Japan doesn't even have a two-party system? What the f? It does. It doesn't have a two-party system. It has a multi-party system, but it doesn't matter because, like, think about it this way. Technically, America also has a multi-party system, except everyone would laugh at you if you were to suggest it as such because it's technically a two-party system, and that two-party is pretty uniparty when it comes to a lot of things. And the similar reality exists in Japan as well. Technically, it's a multi-party system. Doesn't really matter. It's functionally uniparty. Like in America, we have the Green Party, right? We have the Libertarian Party. We have all these other parties as well beyond the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, but like at least they make it to the docket. Like they have a slot on the ballots, right? The other parties, you have to go through a lot if you're independent to like basically get into the ballots to begin with. There are major hurdles, but most people would not consider America to be a multi-party system. They would consider it to be a duopoly. Anyway, let's continue.
Expiration date. Japan had no choice but to accept.
Before we go any further, I just want to take a second to thank a great friend of the channel and the sponsor of this video, AnyDesk. Because without partners like AnyDesk, we couldn't make these videos. AnyDesk is an incredible program that lets you control and access any of your devices from anywhere in the world at any time. Honestly, it's kind of magical being able to control my desktop from the other side of the world in just 2 clicks. Once you're connected, AnyDesk is great at retrieving files, as I've been doing a lot lately, printing remotely, working from home, or helping family members troubleshoot technical issues. Luckily, it's as easy to set up as it is to use. Just download, type in the access code, and you're in. Easy as can be. Sound too good to be true? Well, try it for yourself at anydesk.com/spectacles. And because it's totally free for personal use, checking it out is a great way to support the channel without spending a dime. You'll be glad you did. And so will we. That's anydesk.com/spectacles. Thank you, AnyDesk. So, Japan is gripped by an identity crisis. 2 images show who was winning this fight by 1960 in the Diet, Japan's parliament. This shows how many seats each party controlled after the 1955 election. These are the 2 biggest parties, the Liberals and Democrats. They're both conservative and they're totally dominant. But here's the Diet after the next election. The 2 biggest parties are just gone. Except they're really just hiding, because this is the Liberal Democratic Party, a sort of conservative super party formed in a merger that was actually organized in part by the CIA, who wanted Japan's anti-communist parties to join forces. Heading up the new party was this guy, Nobusuke Kishi, a war criminal and former minister in the wartime government. By 1957, he was prime minister, and he had 2 core goals. First, revise the Constitution, eliminate Article 9, and remilitarize Japan. And second, renegotiate the humiliating security treaty with America. Now, treaty renegotiation was widely popular in Japan, not just with the right wing. So when Kishi, after 3 years of haggling with the American government, secured key concessions, mandated consultation with the Japanese government about American troop movements, a defense commitment from America for Japan, and a 10-year term of treaty renewal rather than it being indefinite, he expected to be hailed as a hero.
But there were 2 problems. While treaty renegotiation was widely popular, revising the Constitution was anything but. Most Japanese wanted nothing to do with war, and eliminating Article 9 to remilitarize the country threatened a return to those dark days. Moreover, Kishi wasn't a hero. He was a horrible man who'd helped steer Japan into a devastating war from which he massively
Bro, good thing that like it was a one and done type situation, and I'm certain that the LDP doesn't have like prominence, nor did he have his like children or grandchildren, for example, also run the country. That would never happen in a democratic nation. Japan obviously is Sugoi, it's kawaii. It is a beacon, a shining light of democracy. So like if I were to find out that like they've been basically operating under a uniparty structure for multiple generations, like I would be shocked. Multiple generations of people who either did the war crimes or denied the war crimes ever happened, for example, that would go against the Sugoi nature of Japan. I would say onegashimasu. I would say, tamago-san do doku desu ka? That's what I would say, and then I wouldn't say anything else. Those are the only words I know in Japanese. So I would say nani. I said tamago sando doku desu ka? Two egg sandwiches, please. Yeah. Or no, I said where's the egg sandwich, right? I said where's the egg sandwich, not two. You asked where the egg, lol. I said where's the egg sandwich? Tamago sando doku desu ka? Tamago sando doku desu ka? I remember when you asked me where's the ATM in Japanese in Japan and you thought you cooked. Yeah, bro, I did cook. I cooked that shit up. Excuse me. I'm multilingual. I'm a polyglot, bro. Call me Shauma. Call me Shauma NYC the way I'm speaking all the different languages. Isn't it polyglot? Polyglot? I don't know what it's called. Polyglot is the way I am, okay? Shauma NYC or Hasanabi? Shinzo Abe more like Hasanabe. Except you live in California and speak no Spanish. I'm Turkish, bro. Do you know how inaccessible Spanish is to me? It would have been ridiculous if I knew any Spanish growing up in Istanbul and Ankara, bro. There's no Mexicans there. What you mean you don't learn Spanish? It's like, yeah, bro, that's insane. We learn German and French beyond English, okay? Spain, yeah, dude, the pivotal powerhouse of Europe, Spain. That you would get laughed out of every room if someone was like, "Hey, we need to teach Spanish. Either, instead of the two options of French or German, we should also do Spanish as well." Everyone would laugh at you like, "What?" I'm saying for Turkey, it's irrelevant and ridiculous. Obviously, for America, it's very necessary. Anyway, let's continue.
Massively profited while the rest of the country suffered. He was also just elitist, arrogant, and corrupt. He openly disdained the media and the Japanese public as beneath him and centralized power in an inner circle of allies. Under Kishi, many feared a comeback of the old Japan. As a result, he'd galvanized not only the left, but a wide swath of Japanese.
Basically, it doesn't matter if, we only criticize China for this kind of shit because, China is our enemy, and also they're, ideologically claiming to be communist. If they were built by the CIA and saying they hate communists and were built by the CIA specifically to kill communists, then obviously no one would be complaining about China and their political organization. Okay, that's it.
Society against him. And when he attempted to force through legislation expanding police powers to stifle this widespread public dissent, protesters took to the streets and forced him to back down. By January of 1960, even though he'd seriously improved the treaty terms, nobody trusted him, and mass resistance was guaranteed. Instead of calming things down, Kishi had fired the country up. The fight for Japan's future.
Bro, we really fell off, dude. We unironically fell off, big time, okay? We used to write other countries' constitutions and shit. Think about that. There is no world, we can't even command influence over Afghanistan for more than 20 years. That's pretty crazy to think about. We just sit around and hope that there's a Javier Milei type figure who is going to be an Ameribu in and of itself nowadays. It doesn't have to be a CIA operation. Back in the day, a Javier Milei type figure winning an election would require tremendous CIA interference. Yeah, nowadays we can't even dunk on the Houthis, which we were literally participating in the genocide of Like literally, we were doing a straight up in real time genocide upon this population of like 15-year-olds who are getting rockets from Iran. And now we can't even enforce our will upon them. They just turn around and they're like, yeah, we just have unlimited rockets, dog. You guys are, our shit costs like 50 grand a pop. Your shit costs like $7 million a pop. You can't keep this shit up. America spent $1 billion trying to wipe out the Houthi capabilities, targeting capabilities in the Red Sea, only to arrive at the same conclusion that the Saudis did, which was, let's not fuck with these people. Let's not fuck with these people. Please, bro. Please, please, please. Let's not fuck with these people. They're gonna, we can't deal with it. It's too much money. Yeah, we can't even have a functioning pier. We haven't been able to build a goddamn functioning pier, man. We did anti-vaxxing campaigns in the Philippines because we were scared that the Philippines were going to be too close to China because they were giving them free vaccinations.
Sure, was getting uglier. But Kishi didn't care. He wanted to get the job done. Still, months of massive protests unnerved some LDP legislators, so he delayed the vote on the treaty until May 19th, the last day.
I know it's satire, but at this point, you do complain a lot on how America doesn't interfere with developing nations of Java. No, I think it's an important thing to recognize in comparison to how unimaginably cruel. We are still unimaginably cruel. I mean, the thing that I just explained about the Philippines is unimaginably cruel. Okay? Like, that's insane. It sounds insane that we would do that. And yet we did. But like, it's more so about how much weaker we are in general in comparison to how aggro we were back in the day and how much power we actually did command back in the day. Can you ban this guy for his username? I donate to cam girls. Why? I'm a cam girl. And he donates to me at the top of the hour to avoid seeing the ad and also to democratize the lack of ad seeing by donating into the community with gifted subs. I'm not going to hate on that. I'm a cam girl, baby. Donate to me, you know? My brother, we are definitely have more destructive potential. It's just people are speaking up and finally slowing the war machine down. You are insane if you think that us speaking out is slowing the war machine down. Yeah, dude. Yeah, they saw we listened to the Macklemore song. we listened to the Macklemore song. That's why the genocide in Gaza is done now. We packed that shit up.
Of the Diet's session. But even then, Kishi couldn't be sure he'd get his way. He needed more time. So he moved to extend the session, but the opposition saw it coming, and they blockaded the halls of the Diet, barricading the speaker in his office. Here was an unprecedented confrontation between the two sides of the core identity crisis facing Japan, and millions of Japanese across the country were watching it unfold in bouts, as both major parties resorted to force to either obstruct or jam through a political agenda. Kishi won this round, but the treaty's opponents weren't finished. In their view, Kishi had made it clear he'd stop at nothing to get his way, and maybe they should do the same. Crucially for the opposition, the Diet is bicameral. While the lower house voted on May 20th, Japan's upper house still had a say in the matter. They couldn't reject the treaty outright, but they could delay the bill until the next satisfaction. Soon, hordes of citizens took to the streets every day, featuring a major protest somewhere in the country. The energy had transcended partisan politics to encompass a majority of the population. These weren't just student radicals or urban laborers, they were office workers and housewives. Even a number of conservatives, fed up with Kishi's suicidal politics, began funneling money from Japan's business establishment to left-wing groups organizing the protests. Still, the Diet's upper house wasn't budging. Yet. But the whole exercise was turning into a real problem for Kishi until on June 10th, just over a week before the treaty was slated to ratify, it got a whole lot worse. Ahead of his arrival, Eisenhower sent his press secretary, Jim Hagerty. But on the way from the airport to meet Kishi, Hagerty's car was assaulted by protesters who surrounded the vehicle, cracked the windows, and caved in the roof, all while shouting anti-American slogans. Eisenhower's security, and by extension the viability of his visit, was called into question. A massive embarrassment for Kishi and a coup for the protesters. It was a small victory, though, because time was running out. The protesters had staged massive demonstrations, unprecedented strikes, even intimidated the president of the United States.
Yeah, they were saying, "Go home, Yankee," which is a slur, by the way. Yeah. Liberals are going to be like, wow, dude. Wow. I can't believe these guys were calling us the Y word. The Y word.
United States. Yet still, the country was hurtling toward the ratification date without a hint of delay from the Diet. It was now or never. They needed to do something big. On June 15, 1960, tens of thousands of Japanese gathered before the Diet building. They were faced by 5,000 police officers. At first, the protests were non-violent. One group even managed to break into the Diet compound where they peacefully occupied a garden, sang songs, and gave speeches. Elsewhere in the vicinity, though, a cohort of right-wing counter-protesters assaulted the demonstrators using planks driven through with nails. A melee ensued. Now things were completely out of hand. The police, who'd been instructed to exercise restraint, now decided the time for such things was over. They attempted to force the protesters out of the Diet compound, beating many of them unconscious. Blood began to run, instigating a mass panic.
Motherfuckers will bitch and moan about Russia and Poland, but will say nothing about America occupying Japan and writing their constitution. Yeah, because we're the good guys, and the Russians are the bad guys, akin to the Nazis. That's it. And if you were to turn around and say that, like, the American occupation in many Asian countries, the American occupation that is, like, pretty much seemingly permanent in these Asian countries, all of that stuff is, like, unimaginable, really fucked up. People will look at you like, dude, what are you talking about? Shut the fuck up. We are the good guys. That's it.
Panic in a crowd crush that followed. Michiko Kanba, a female student at Tokyo University, was
There's a Hasanabi birther in the chat. Who is we? Dude, you are Turkish. Nah, he is Turkish. I was born in Denmark. That does not make me Danish. Just because you was in USA does not make you American. I can't believe you banned that guy, Young Peasy. I'm unbanning him. That is exactly the kind of racism that I like seeing in the chat. Like, very funny and very entertaining. That is the funniest type of racism you can arrive at. He stopped being funny. I mean, he was just adding the mods, which is annoying. But, you know.
By midnight, Kishi had given police full authority to clear the building out. But out here, the protest, inflamed by Michiko's death, raged on. Kishi contemplated calling in self-defense force troops, but his cabinet talked him down. Instead, he announced he would resign within the month. Eisenhower canceled his visit. It would be another 15 years before a sitting U.S. president first set foot in Japan. Still, protests continued to rock the country, reaching their peak on June 18th, one day before the treaty's automatic ratification deadline. As one student protester put it, despite U.S. approval of the new treaty, I felt certain that the revision would fail in the face of such widespread opposition, a conviction shared by the adults around me. However, the upper house remained silent, and on June 19th, the treaty was ratified.
Oh yeah, we had internment camps too.
In one sense, the Japanese left and the broader protest movement had failed. It was a critical victory for the conservative side of Japan's identity crisis. The treaty was ratified and the country had taken a clear step toward U.S. alignment, which was more or less legally locked in until the treaty was due for renewal in 10 years. But in another sense, the opposition had scored a major victory. Eisenhower backed out and Kishi resigned, proving that two could play political hardball. In turn, neither had this episode truly settled the fundamental question about what kind of nation Japan would become. If anything, the choice in the upcoming elections seemed more polarized than ever, as the Socialist Party leader Inejiro Asanuma visited the Chinese Communists, still not recognized by Japan as the official government, where he
literally so cucked that we made Japan also not recognize the Communist Party as the official leaders because that was our policy. This guy was too busy mewing, dude. This guy is a mewing legend. If he stopped mewing for a moment and started doing some politics, maybe Japan would be socialist by now. Yeah, he went there to Mog Mao. He looks like Asian you, bro. Dude, what? This is like always the meta. I look at a Turkish communist, you're like, bro, he looks exactly like you. I look at you look like young Stalin. You just have no way of understanding that just, you know, communists and socialists alike are just usually, they're just giga chads. You see a dude with glasses and facial hair and you go, oh, that's Hasan.
treated with party chairman Mao Zedong, gave speeches declaring his friendship with China and opposition to America, and returned to Japan wearing Mao's new leader, Kishi's Minister for International Trade and Industry, Hayato Ikeda. This was the uniform of a graduate of an elite school, an economist, and a finance minister. Hardly the look of a man destined to repair the party's elitist reputation. But it wasn't just Ikeda's clothing that seemed to doom his odds. Indeed, his party had chosen him because he was thought to be an empty shirt, someone with no real base of support within the party who could stand in until the impending election determined the better man for the job. After all, Ikeda's career was littered with political missteps. Back in 1950, he'd infamously suggested that Japan's poor should cope with high food costs by eating more cheap barley and less expensive rice, prompting comparisons to Marie Antoinette. Worse still, Ikeda had been trade and industry minister once before in 1952, but had lasted less than a month after he was quoted in the press remarking coldly, "Even if 5 or 10 small businessmen commit suicide, it can't be helped." Asanuma, the everyman, couldn't have asked for a better opponent. But he had more than Ikeda to contend with. On October 12, 1960, Inejiro Asanuma stood on stage for a debate inside this building in Tokyo, with Ikeda seated a few feet away in the front row. Millions were watching on TV when suddenly a man rushed on stage and seemed to collide with Asanuma. He wielded a wakizashi, a kind of short sword, and as he lunged at Asanuma a second time, he was tackled to the ground. But it was too late. The assailant's first strike had been
another fucking gay incel fascist doing just, gay incel fascist shit. Typical Nazi behavior. Uncensored on Patreon, ain't no way. I mean, yeah, listen, big homie's got to make money somehow, okay?
deep blow through the ribs. Asanuma died within minutes. It was Japan's first political assassination since the war. The killer was a 17-year-old right-wing radical who would hang himself in jail a few weeks later after scrawling, "Long live the Emperor," on his cell wall in toothpaste.
Most believed the murder would
this isn't Mishima. You're right. I was thinking of this is a different incel fascist loser. You're right. Hey, not all the gay incels are fascists. Well, in Japan they are. That dude who capped Shinzo Abe a fascist? No. The dude who capped Shinzo Abe, the dude who capped Shinzo Abe is just like kind of crazy. The dude who killed Shinzo Abe was crazy. He was a veteran, but I don't think he was like I don't think that he was what do you call it? I don't think that he was like a fascist or anything. He just had like a very clear-cut political goal, which was anti-Mooney, wanted to possibly anti-Korean in general, but definitely anti-Mooney, and wanted to kill Shinzo Abe for allowing the Korean cult to operate alongside the CIA inside of Japan. His mother was a follower, a cult follower, and lost all of her money to the cult. And he saw Shinzo Abe as directly responsible for this cult operating inside of Japan. And he also was like, you might not agree with his methods. It seems like the Japanese population certainly did agree with him. Ultimately, his cause wasn't unjust. Like, he wasn't wrong for being like, why is this CIA-backed Korean cult operating inside of Japanese boundaries? Like, why are you letting that happen? It fucked my mom's life up. You are responsible. Which, by the way, was a commonly held opinion in the nation of Japan pretty much immediately after this political assassination. It's probably one of the most politically consequential and overall most successful political assassinations of our lifetime. Like, I don't know what the comparison would look like. It would literally be like, obviously this is we hypothetical, not saying that this is the case, not saying you should do this, but like, if someone, I don't even want to say Joe Biden because people are going to clip this and like get me in trouble. So let's say back in the day, if like someone assassinated, I don't know, Donald Trump, right? And at a time when he had like 30% approval rating, they assassinated him specifically because they just hated that he was JFK seems like a safe choice. No, I'm just like thinking of like I don't know, something that they hated. They were like, dude, you wanted to abolish Obamacare. We want Medicare for all. Why are you standing against Medicare for all? And they assassinated him. And then, like, literally a week later, Congress decided to pass legislation, and that legislation was Medicare for all. That's basically what happened with Shinzo Abe. Like, that's what ended up happening with Shinzo Abe. Basically, like, basically what ended up happening is, like, he literally was like, I'm killing you because of your involvement with the Moonies. And then, like, a month or so later, first they were like, should the public even fund his funeral? Like, that was a point of contention. People were literally like, nah, I don't think the public should fund his funeral. Like, why are we doing that? Fuck that guy, which was crazy. That was like my first foray into Japanese politics being kind of weirdly cool, where they were just like, yeah, no, we shouldn't fund his public funeral. And also, then very shortly after, they investigated the Moonies and have been shutting it down. He was already out of power, but he was the longest. I think he was the longest running PM. He was out of power at the time, but he was like literally at a campaign rally. Yeah, plans to place a memorial at the site of Shinzo's assassination were discarded. It is pretty crazy. It's just not heard of in any. It's not heard of in any modern context, I would say. But yeah, he was stumping. He was out doing a stump speech when he got stomped on, if you know what I'm saying.
Support for the socialists, both for reasons of sympathy and because it reinforced the fear which spread under Kishi's leadership, that behind the LDP, in the shadow of Japan's right wing, lurked violence and terror. However, just days after Asanuma's death, Ikeda stood before the Diet to give a speech, where many expected characteristically direct and concise remarks, where Kishi might have even made a campaign speech. Ikeda shocked his colleagues by delivering an impassioned eulogy for Asanuma, reciting the lyrics from one of his 1920s.
Yeah, famously at the time I said, this was one of the few instances where like Japanese xenophobia and anti-Korean racism kind of was like used for good against the Moonies, like specifically. Like, it's one of those very, very weird moments where like it's like an incredibly rare racism W, because the Japanese are very racist in general, but specifically against Koreans, which is kind of wild because it's like, bro, you literally fucked them over. Like, why are you still carrying this grudge? Like, you're the ones who did all this fucked up shit to them, and yet you're still like xenophobic towards them. That's wild as hell. But I guess then you think about it and it's like, well, that's exactly how white supremacy works in America against black people. Like, you have resentment towards black people, even though like you enslaved them. That seems very weird to me. Like, if anything, the only resentment should be from black people towards white people, but that's just how racism works. They don't admit the fucked up shit they did in Korea. Yeah, exactly. So ultimately, this was a very unique moment in Japanese history, I would say, where like their unimaginable amounts of anti-Korean sentiment kind of worked in the favor of like dismantling this operation backed by the CIA in Japan.
His campaign songs and commending his colleagues' commitment to the public good. His words left many in tears.
Yeah, Zainichi Koreans were literally there for longer than the occupation of Korea in the 1900s, and they still hate them.
But this wasn't just a one-off performance. The storming of the Diet had been traumatic. The death of a protester, tragic. But seeing a colleague stabbed to death mere feet away, that changed Ikeda. Gone were the wire-rimmed glasses and double-breasted jackets. He adopted chunky plastic frames and simple suits. The clothes of a man who no longer considered himself above the people.
Yeah, he had a change of heart.
Nor was Ikeda's transformation limited to a new outfit. He now fully grasped the gravity of Japan's political chaos. He saw how Kishi's confrontational winner-take-all politics had taken his country to a very dark place. Politics was too existential, too polarized, too violent. In his campaign, Ikeda sought to bring himself closer to the people, touring the country to discuss food prices, unemployment, and other kitchen table issues, promising, if elected, to double Japan's national income within a decade and to abstain from the golf and lavish geisha parties so beloved by his predecessor.
It worked. In the 1960 election, the LDP gained a number of seats as Japan's left wing shrank. More importantly, Ikeda kept his.
I think the other part of this conversation that is understandably not being discussed in a video that's only 26 minutes long, and this is my understanding of what happened with the Japanese Socialist Party and the Japanese Communist Party in general, is that like the left was unimaginably divided. Well, I guess not unimaginably divided. The left was expectedly incredibly divided in Japan along the same exact boundaries that you see everywhere else historically. You basically had like a kind of peasant class, not directly a peasant class, but like kind of like a peasant class, but rural communism versus the more elitist or the children of elites, like the educated communist divide that played a big role in dividing, and inevitably leading to like the revolutionary communists that wanted to maintain a revolutionary and oftentimes violent structure, a violent form of resistance, versus like people who are more social democrat adjacent, and that divide obviously also led to the purge of the revolutionary side, and yeah, and then the rest is history. Now you have we are na 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 na. The Japanese Communist Party now does anime trailers for themselves. Like, it's such a dense leftist meme. This is why I say leftism is a universal principle, just like fascism, where like no matter where you go in the world, if you see someone who is a leftist, one, there's going to be infighting. There's going to be purity spirals too. And last but not least, the third foundational principle, which is you are going to have a person try to rap, we must raise the minimum wage to 1,500 yen, and we must have half-price university specialized tuition, licensed nursery school for 300,000 children, significant reduction in national health insurance premiums. Hasanabi meets up with Japanese communists March 1st, 2023. Oh, this is sick though. Musica. Okay, they're not they're anarchists, first of all. And as classic anarchists, no working ass anarchists, of course they were closed, even though it said they were supposed to be open. Y anticapitalismo. I mean, there is a robust. I mean, one of the most effective ANCOM states, I guess if you want to call it that, is this is the Zapatistas. So it does not surprise me that they're ANCOMs. Oh God, the anti-Marxist police are here, the thought police. These were my favorite glasses that I lost them at. I didn't even lose them. Like, I literally left them accidentally at Border Patrol in Mexico. So stupid. I don't know. I should get them again. They're like Muscat or something. We just like kind of wait until see. Well, there was places that were kind of open. Like some of the bars were open. I knew that there is no way that there's. I just got back from Japan yesterday. I'm quite sad to be back in Texas. When are you going to go back to Japan? Yeah, honestly, I think we should. You know how there's like a Paris syndrome most often felt by like Japanese and Chinese citizens that go to Paris and realize that like shit kind of sucks. There is a Tokyo syndrome. I swear to God, you come back to wherever you live from Tokyo, you will feel sad, like instantly. As soon as I arrived, I never feel this way. When I come back from any foreign nation, I come back to the land of the free, it's eagles screeching in my ear. I'm like, hell yeah, baby. Fucking freedom time. My dick gets hard thinking about how our brave soldiers out there are fighting to make sure that we have free speech here, right? Whereas when I come back from Japan, I'm like, oh, I'm so sad. This shit sucks. Like, think about it. Will Neff is the most American guy, the most pro-America man on the planet, okay? He loves America down to the core, okay? And yet when he came back from Japan, he was so sad to be in such a mid-ass country. Shanghai will blow your mind. Download Alipay before you go. This is the same chatter who I think earlier was talking about how, you know, I need a burner phone. Japan is Wakanda for white people. Not, it is kind of Wakanda for white people, but also you have to remember it's like white boy Wakanda, but also like it is also one of the few places on the planet where like white people will, if they stay there for an extended period of time, will experience like anti-white racism, which weirdly enough is not very Wakanda. You know what I mean? When you think about it, not that it matters ultimately. Japan is starting to be like, okay, too many foreigners after running into one Karen. Yeah. Flights to Japan are so much post-COVID. I went to Japan round trip for $800. Yeah. You offset that by going to Japan where with $1 you can buy like 8 Gucci bags or something. I don't know what's going on with their currency, but like flying into Japan, incredibly expensive. Everything else after that, not expensive at all. Japan is also one of those countries where like obviously you're not a Japanese citizen. This doesn't work for you, but like it is one of those countries where you quite literally, where the government literally is like, please, we will pay you to have a house in the rural areas. Like, please go and rebuild this house. It's $1. Please just live there. We beg you. Please, please, please. You can have a whole ass house. Anything not to have immigrants, I guess, except that is also loosening as well. Japan now literally has like immigrant visas. Like they are way, way more open to well, at least wealthy immigrants. They are suffering from their unimaginable amounts of xenophobia. That's why their population is just old as shit. Ain't nobody's. Anyway, let's get
Word.
back.
While in office, he never did play golf, nor was he seen at any parties. He attended studiously to governance, and though he died of cancer before his promise to the nation could be realized, Ikeda's policies doubled Japan's national income in just 7
Which country not open to rich immigrants law? Japan was not open to any immigrants, rich or poor. No, Japan was like, dude, Japan is straight up racist, okay? I don't know how to explain it to you. Like, there's no other way to describe it. Americans can't comprehend this because they're not white. So they're like, what do you mean? Only white people have the capacity to be racist. Like, no, like a lot of countries are racist, but Japan is like extra racist, okay? It is literally an ethno state. People try to be like, oh no, what are you talking about? The Japanese population is quite diverse. It's like, no, it's not. It's like 98% Japanese, bro. It is incredibly racist. You will not believe the price of this house in Japan. Landlord TikTok in Japan.
I'm gonna find out how hard it is to buy a house in Japan. Today, the median house in California costs $830K. This is what the median house in California looks like. When I learned that Japan lets foreigners buy and sell property with the same rights and taxes as its own citizens, I became curious what $830K might buy in Japan. So, I'm here to find out. This is the city of Sendai, famous for its cherry blossoms. Less than 2 hours from Tokyo by bullet train. The streets are beautiful, and the people are kind.
I don't recommend this.
Can you explain what you mean with racist? Like, no, just straight up xenophobic. Like, that's it. Ask white people living in Japan their experiences, and they will tell you, like, there are so many places where you just simply cannot rent if you're a white person, okay? It's just like, I don't know how else to describe it other than that's just straight up racism.
Store called teach you.
Okay.
Teach.
The next store price expensive. Okay. Oh.
Yes.
They save teeth, and they have tongue restaurants and wiener coffee. Their spotless subways take you everywhere in class. Try to imagine finding upholstered seats on a subway in the US. So, I assumed the real estate here would be expensive. I went to look at this house, which was built in 1979 and fully renovated in 2021. It's 1,300 square feet on a 2,500 square foot lot, and it's beautiful. The
Which is pretty big for Japanese standards.
asking price is $129,000. And when I asked the agent if an offer of $100K would be reasonable, he nodded enthusiastically. So, for the cost of the median house in California, you can buy 8 of this house in Japan, plus this van downstairs and 2 wiener coffees.
Yeah, this guy is a landlord who, like, I've seen these videos. I saw another video that he posted before. He deleted it, I think. He deletes his videos. This motherfucker is literally like new school colonist, basically. He's obviously comparing California to a smaller city, though. Also, they obviously have way lesser income compared to us. Yes.
Years. But his most lasting legacy was his abandonment of the LDP's platform of constitutional revision. Article 9 would stay. Japan would not remilitarize. But not everyone celebrated Ikeda's achievements. Kishi, for one, lamented the move away from constitutional revision, while many LDP members decried his administration in general as do-nothing, a critique Ikeda seemed to embrace. As his close confidant and future Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa recalled, the issue was not what policies should be followed, but how policies should be decided in the Diet. And this issue was not really a joking matter. In America or Britain, this how has been decided as the result of a long history and centuries of tradition. It might take Japan many more years to get to that point. Ikeda's attitude was that, in order to promote the healthy development of parliamentary democracy, the Conservative Party, but also the progressive parties as well, should exercise a bit more self-control. By nature, the younger the democracy, the more difficult and delicate this exercise of democratic leadership.
Here, look.
In Japan. This is Kyoto, Japan's capital for over 1,000 years. Kyoto has more than 2,000 Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines, and 1.5 million polite people with bicycles that they park in bicycle parking lots. Kyoto has everything else you could want too, from signs that remind you to go home to 20-second rest routines in taxis, to celebrity sightings. Steve was probably in town checking on this Apple store I found. I emailed the local apartment leasing agents who wanted to know what visa I had, since tourist visas only allow 90 days and the typical apartment lease in Japan is 2 years. I learned that enrolling in a language school to learn Japanese for a few hours a day could qualify me for a 2-year student visa.
Is that per month or per year?
Then I met the agents, and we had dramatic communication. When I got enough questions right, we would go look at places. Not yet. No. And what I saw was amazing. This 3-bedroom, 2-bath in a fancy neighborhood was $2,900. This brand new 3-bedroom next to a major university, only $1,300. And this 1-bedroom with a beautiful river and mountain behind, only $520 a month. And this place, while modest, was a short hike from one of the best views of Kyoto, and only $350 a month. Is that Snap? I have a lot more to learn, but renting an apartment in Japan seems exciting. What do you think? Should I do it? Even though I'm a man? I'm gonna find out how.
Bro's out here trying to be a land shogun. Oh, yeah. Read the comments. This isn't a realistic view of what it's like to rent an apartment in Japan. Seeing apartments is one thing. Going through the actual rental process is completely different beast. It's a huge hassle. Takes weeks to complete, not to mention 3 to 6 months of rent upfront cash, most of which you will not get back. Things are changing in Japan in terms of like the anti-immigrant sentiment, so much so that there are like specific services you can hire that will find apartment complexes just for foreigners, but you still have to go for the most part through one of those services in general. Where were we? I haven't been able to finish the video. Our basic policies of the kind that disregard for law and order that prevailed during the protests will never be allowed.
Ikeda didn't just moderate the LDP. He moderated Japan. By abandoning his party's more divisive and extreme policies, he diffused the most potent criticisms from Japan's left, resulting in a political system which the LDP has more or less dominated ever since. These highly stable politics have brought benefits, encouraging Japan's meteoric economic growth during the 1970s and 80s, while Ikeda helped institute a less winner-take-all, more consultative legislative culture in the Diet, but it has brought downsides as well. Political choice in Japan is very limited. Police regulations have rendered large-scale protests a nearly extinct form of political speech, and economic successes have given way to near paralyzing stagnation. In one sense, this story is ultimately about one simple trade-off that defines practically every political question. This is a spectrum of political possibility. At the far left is chaos. Think of war, revolutions, even anarchy. There's no telling what politics might look like in a year, a week, even a day. The horizons of political possibility are wide, even boundless, but the cost of such opportunity is ever-present instability and the threat of violence. At the other end is autocracy. Politics is stable, consistent, and reliable. Society is largely static. When it's good, it's great. But when it isn't, there's little
No, bro, he's not saying like on the left is it like he's not saying left versus right is in like the way that you understand left-right dynamics in politics. He's saying if you were to put it on a spectrum, on the one side of the spectrum you have, he's just saying left as a side of a spectrum, not like as a political opinion. Yeah. It's not the spectrum that you understand. He's saying that like full tilt anarchy versus full-blown authoritarian control
can be done to change it. Most regimes fall somewhere on this spectrum, trading between the benefits of opportunity and stability. Of course, some regimes, like Putin's Russia, have the worst of both worlds: extremely narrow political horizons and an unpredictable, ever-present threat of violence meted out by a capricious dictator. But the spectrum is useful because it articulates this principle, that to gain in either opportunity or stability requires some sacrifice in the other. A political system can't afford boundless opportunity and reliable stability and safety. Liberal democracy, as a regime, attempts to straddle the difference, providing democratic means to increase political choice and possibilities, while at the same time constraining that choice within inviolable principles of individual rights, increasing stability. Where exactly each nation sits varies, because every society, particularly its leaders, must make this choice in formative moments. For Japan, 1960 was that formative moment. And with the support of most Japanese, Ikeda made a choice. Faced with the horrors of pre-war fascist chaos, the devastation of a suicidal nationalist war, and the resurgence of domestic political instability and conflict, Japan chose stability. Japan chose economic prosperity, and in turn, Japan chose narrow political horizons, a system governed largely by one party, where political disputes are resolved quietly in backroom deals rather than in public brawls and polarized elections.
In many ways, Japan is less democratic for its choice, less responsive to the needs and demands
for his choice.
of its people, and less tolerant of public dissent. However, it remains fundamentally a democratic society. At what point that trade-off between stability and opportunity, between safety and freedom, becomes unacceptable? It's a difficult question indeed.
No matter how much American involvement occurs in the development of a nation's constitution, if it's like a direct occupation where we write the constitution, even then, as long as they're in the sphere of influence of the United States of America, then that was a choice, and it was democratic, and it's good. It's liberal democracy in display. If a nation, however, has any kind of revolution or anything like that, and the people are actually not only making a choice, but like actively, literally engaging in action against the dictatorship, for example, then it's not a choice, and it's very bad, and that's not liberal democracy, that's authoritarian. This distinction is perfectly representative of the way we look at China versus the way we look at Japan. Inside of the CCP, there are obviously other factions as well that are not so ideologically committed, at least even in theory or in aesthetics, to socialism, but it doesn't matter because, like, obviously it's still technically a one-party state. However, we don't look at Japan with the same exact critical lens. We think, no, Japan is a liberal democracy. Tomorrow, there could be a communist government if they wanted to have one. We don't even look at it. We don't even look at American politics with the same lens. When you look at American politics, you never consider America to be a multi-party democracy. You think America is a two-party system.